channel. And that is why every 3 or 4 years, there's a new gaming system coming out. First it was the Nintendo, then the Sega Genesis, then the Super Nintendo, then the PlayStation, then the Xbox, and the list goes on and on. So that if you get bored with one, you move on to the next. And then same thing with sports. That one superstar retires, another one steps up. And they inspire into you that, root for these teams. You look at the World Cup, people who have nothing to do with Spain, Pakistanis in England, and they're rooting for Spain. You'd think that they were the ones on the soccer pitch and playing the game. And when they won, they're like, yeah, our team won. And I'm thinking in my mind, what on earth do you have to do with Spain? You can't even speak the language. And this is the reality of it, that the world sucks you into all of these pleasures and pastimes that have absolutely no benefit. And this is the way the world turns, always trying to keep you busy with something else so that you are no longer productive. So even your pastimes have to change. And this is a true distinction between a successful individual and one who is destined for failure. How he uses his pastime. A successful individual, he will find benefit even in his recreation. So when he plays football, when he watches football, he's deriving lessons from it. He's strategizing about it. One of the simplest lessons that you learn from football is that when young kids are playing at a young age, 3, 4, 5, they don't really have a concept of teams. So you throw the ball amongst the kids and they all hoard around the ball and they all start kicking the ball around. And this is their perception of football. At the age of like 5 or 6, if you could get even one individual and get him to understand what offense is, what defense is, and what the nature of the game is, he would beat all of the kids and you would develop a true leader. Just step outside of the box, and even in football, you can learn leadership skills. So even in recreation, you try to make it beneficial, you try to derive lessons from it. And the third thing that you have to develop in this wow idea is that it has to be something which is profitable. Profitable not in the sense that you're earning money and it's going all in your pocket. But the reality of projects is that they need to be sustained and they need to be self-sustained. So when you have something that you're passionate about, something that the community needs, that's not me. Who's speaking? Who's recording this? This is what you call a brain crash. I was like, where is this coming from? Oh, this one? That was like the ultimate brain crash. By the way, that's a very powerful technique. If someone is ever upset at you and they're angry at you and they're telling you off, the best way to calm them down and settle them down is find a way to crash their brain. And I'll tell you one particular trick that works with me. Is since I travel a lot, my wife is always angry at me. Every time I come home, she's like, why have you been away for so long? And even while I'm in Montreal, I have so many other things to do. So every time I come home, and inshallah, I hope she doesn't get this recording. Every time I come home and she's upset, I always find a way to crash her brain. So one of the techniques that I use is that my wife, personally, she loves to cook. This is a passion that she has. So the second she starts going, where have you been? Why are you still late? I'm like, by the way, what was the recipe for that cheesecake you made last week? It was absolutely amazing. And all of a sudden her mind crashes, and she actually starts telling me the recipe, even though I do not care the slightest bit about that recipe. So now getting back to our topic of discussion. That the third aspect of leadership is that whatever project that you embark upon, it has to be profitable. It has to be able to self-sustain itself. So 1, you find something that you're passionate about. 2, find what the community needs. 3, make sure that it's profitable and it's self-sustainable. Not that you're making profit, but that the project itself, within of itself, can sustain itself. Now, what is your greatest tool that you have as individuals? The greatest tool that you have as human beings is your power of influence. There are certain things that we do that persuade people into acting while we realize it or not. One of the simplest things that you can do, and I'm actually doing this right now, is that when you look into the eyes of an individual and you smile at them, they naturally smile back at you. Now, to you in your mind, we don't perceive this as anything great. But what this shows us is that I have the ability, without even saying anything, to create a reaction that I desire from you without even commanding you to do so. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the power of influence. And there are 4 major tools in influence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, which I want to share with you today. Number 1 is that of reciprocity. Meaning that you give a little and you get a lot in return. If you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, there was one individual, Safwan ibn Umayyah, one of the greatest enemies of Islam, someone who hated the Prophet ﷺ to a great degree. He quotes himself as saying that that the Prophet ﷺ was the most despicable and hated of individuals to me. And then a time came that he became the most beloved. The companions asked him, what was it that made the Prophet ﷺ so beloved to you? And that was when Mecca was conquered and it was opened, Safwan ibn Umayyah was given, camel after camel after camel. Now to understand this, you can imagine someone has given you a car. Now not only are they giving you one car, they give you a second car, a third car, a fourth car, up to 300 cars. That is how many camels Safwan ibn Umayyah actually got. So imagine someone gives you 300 cars, what effect is this going to have on you? They tell you to do something, would you not actually go ahead and do it? The Prophet ﷺ told him, okay, now become Muslim. And Safwan ibn Umayyah thinks that, I'll become Muslim, maybe he'll give me another 300 cars. And then he accepts Islam. The lesson you learn from this is that in order to get people to do things for you, you have to do things for them as well. The smallest of things can make the greatest of differences. Just to give you an example, an actual survey that was done. As Muslims, we're always fundraising. We're always fundraising for our schools, always fundraising for our masajid, always fundraising for our projects. When people are told about fundraising, they naturally cringe. This is something that they dislike. And that is because they are giving to these projects that they're not really involved in. So one of the greatest ways to get people to give, and this is something very simple, is that at the fundraiser, you just give them something for free. Give them a free lecture, give them a free pen, and you see that it makes a world of a difference. There was an actual survey that was done in the States where they had a Christian organization. The way they would fundraise money is that they would get the addresses of their congregation and would send them pledge forms. They send them these pledge forms, put the money in, and send it back. Now when they tried this technique, it was very unsuccessful. No one would give money. And they would wonder, why is it that no one is giving money? So they get one of these strategists, one of these specialists, and he tells them, all you have to do is get a pen with your logo and your organization's name on it, and send it to these people for free with the pledge form. And this concept of just sending them a free pen, which didn't even cost, like 40 or 50 pence. Send them this free pen, and on average, they're sending $5 to $6 back for free. So this pen is only worth a couple of pennies, but since they're getting this, there is this human urge that when someone gives to you, you give back to them as well. Number 2 is what they call social proof. This concept of social proof, it states that the more people like something, the more correct it must be. This is what that principle actually states. That the more people like something, the more correct and beneficial it actually must be. So if you look at infomercials in the middle of the night, imagine one of those nights you've been up really late and there's nothing else to do, you turn the TV on, and then you see like these ridiculous ads that you want, abs of steel in 3 days. And you see this individual who's been like training his whole life, and he claims that, I got these abs of steel in 24 hours. Now half of the time is spent marketing this product to you. They're telling you about this product. What is the other half of this infomercial? The other half of this infomercial is all about testimonials. That, I tried it and it worked for me. I tried it and it worked for me. And then you always see this disclaimer at the end. Results may vary from person to person. But that's besides the point. The point over here being is that the reason why they're putting these testimonials in is that the more we see people doing something and accepting something, the more our minds perceive that this object or this product is actually beneficial. And you can try this. Like go to a social gathering one day, and you'll see 2 people standing around. A third person comes, a fourth person comes,